Hello and welcome to Beginner's Python and Machine Learning. My name's Tim Cummings. Today I'm running from a new computer, streaming it, so just let me know if there's any problems at the other end. If you've got any questions, you can post them on YouTube Slack, on Slack or on YouTube chat. So YouTube chat I've got just here somewhere. I know what I need to do. Pop that out. There we go. There's the YouTube chat. And I can close this window. All right, today we're going to look at how to build your Python application into a wheel so that it can be installed easily into other people's computers, or even installed on yourself on another computer somewhere in your own environment. Hi, Asher. All right. So hopefully you'll have the YouTube video there, and below that you'll see some links. And also, if you registered on the Meetup page, you can go to the Meetup page and see the links there as well. So I've got this link here, which is where the instructions are available on GitHub, and these are the instructions we're going to follow through to try to build an application. So we're going to choose our web application that we built a few months ago, and it's all up on GitHub as well. So that'll be our starting source code that we're going to use, and we're going to it was set up using a different way of building, but we're going to look at the official new Python way of building things using a pyproject.toml file. Alright, so click on the link to take us to the instructions. I've got it open here. And alright, now what you're going to need on your computer, you're going to have Python 3.9 or later. You're going to need Git if you want to clone that source code. Or you can actually download it, but it's a bit fiddly. Git makes it much easier. And I'm going to do most of the demonstration using the Pycharm Community Edition. Now, I've installed these things without using administrator privileges. So, like a few people ask me, do we need administrator privileges to install this thing, because they're using work computers that they don't have administrator privileges on. And I've managed to do it now. Even sometimes it asks, like in Pycharm, it asks for the administrator password, and so you just say no to that, and then it continues without the administrator privileges, and it just installs a local copy for that user, so other users can't use it. Similarly with Python, you have to say that you don't want to update the path when you're installing it, and that way you lose a bit of convenience, but it is able to install it locally without requiring administrator privileges. And the Git, you can even download a portable version of that, so it doesn't even has to be installed. Okay, so we're going to run Pycharm as our first step. So if you run Pycharm, I've got it here. And this is the sort of thing you'll see. If it's brand new, you won't have any projects down here. And you can set up a new project, or you can get one from your version control system, such as Git. So that's what we're going to do today. Clone the repository and set up a virtual environment. Okay, so we click on Get from VCS in Pycharm. And if you're doing this from the command line, you'll have to just type the git clone command into the command line. And what git clone command do you need? So the software we're going to use is this one here, BPAML, which is Beginner's Python and Machine Learning Prime Minister. So I'll open that in a new tab. And you see here in this code box here, it tells you how to clone a repository. So that's the clone command we need there. So I'm just going to copy that as the URL for cloning this repository. And so when we go back to here, it just asks us for the URL. We're going to be using Git, which is by default. And so we'll just paste that in. bpl-prime-minister.git. And that's going to put it into my Pycharm projects folder, which is just in my user home folder on Windows. And so we'll click clone. And this will, we can say we can trust it. I know I can trust it because I wrote it. I haven't actually tried what happens when you don't trust it, but this one I know I can trust. And what it wants to do is create a virtual environment. Now, virtual environments are fantastic ways of keeping all your each Python project that you're working on isolated from each other, so they don't have consequences. Like if you're using a system-wide Python and installing stuff into the system area, then you might install a package for one project that then gets started being used for another project if you're not using virtual environments. So I always say use virtual environments and make sure everything is isolated. So it's just, these are the default values and they seem pretty good. And you see the dependencies. It's seen that this project's got a file called requirements.txt, which is a standard way in Python to define your dependencies. So it's just going to use them to work out what it needs to use to populate this virtual environment. And there's our requirements.txt. It's using Flask, Flask Bootstrap, and python.env. Alright, now I've installed Python 3.10 on this computer, and it's been configured as the base Python interpreter for the virtual environment that's being created. Even though it doesn't have it's not on the path. So I noticed that when I try doing this in terminal, and I say, tell me what version of Python I'm running, and it says Python is not even found. So that's because it's not on the path. Alright, so let's arrange this screen. We'll put and here are our instructions. Okay, clone the repository and set up the virtual environment. We've just done that. Check out pyproject.toml. Now, feel free to stop me at any point and we can go over any of these tasks, because it's easy for me to do something while you're not looking at the screen because you're doing stuff on your own computer, and then you get lost. And I don't mind going back because if you've missed it, then someone else probably missed it as well. Okay, so check out pyproject.toml. That's the name of a branch that I've created in this Git, because Git here was set up with this setup. This main branch. See the main branch down here, Git branch main, was set up using this setup.py, which was the old way of using setup tools to build your Python packages, and it had a few problems, and so it's good to see that we're moving to a more configuration way of building packages rather than like setup.py is actually a Python script that gets run as part of the process of building stuff, and it calls a function out of setup tools, this setup function. Alright, now if I click on the Git tab down the bottom here, you can see we've currently got the main branch checked out, but back on origin, which is remote, there are other branches, and this is the one we want. So if I right click on that one and say check out, it copies it locally and makes it the main one. And the reason I've done that, the main thing it's done is it's changed setup.txt to be setup.py to now be setup.txt, because in their effort to make this stuff backwardly compatible, if they see a setup.py, they will use it, even when we're using pyproject.toml for building things. So let's rename that to make sure that it doesn't cause us any problems. And then follow the instructions in building.md. You see I've got building.md here and that's got some instructions. I'll just click that, which is really the same stuff repeated in this project, so that you don't need to have this one open. But we'll use the web page open because it's easier to have the two windows. All right, so we've checked out Pyproject. Now, the first thing that's always a good idea to do is to create a new branch for any changes that you make, and so you don't pollute the main branch until you're sure that all your changes are correct, and then you can merge them back into the main branch or this other branch that you got from somewhere else. So you could do this from the command lines. Checkout -b will create a new branch, and we'll just call it BPAML 168 because today is Meetup 168 in Beginner's Python. Or if you're using the graphical user interface, we just right click on here and say new branch based on pyproject.toml, and we'll call this one BPAML 168, and we'll check out the branch. That's good. So now we can make all these changes, and we know it's easy to roll back because we can always just go back to this branch here, and none of our changes will come with us. So let's go through the steps. With this new pyproject.toml method, and there's actually a web page I've got here which describes it so it's a reference you can use, and these are all the references how they're discussing setting it all up in the python.org. And the reason python.org don't give you a lot of information is because they're really providing a framework, the Pyproject framework, that all the different other tools like setuptools or poetry or whatever can use. So you really have to go to each of those tools to see the best way to use it. And this one, we're going to be using setuptools, which is probably the most commonly used set of tools for the old way of building these packages, but it can be used as well with this new system. Okay. But to use it, we need to import a module, and for that module has to be installed into our virtual environment, and that module is called build. So we just go to requirements.txt and type in build, and now Pycharm does a lot of the work for you. This is why I really like Pycharm, and it goes, okay, build's not satisfied, do you want to install that module? And I'll say yes, install the module, and if we look down here it just says installed. So now I can use build to do things. So I've done step 1 here. Step 2, create a pyproject.toml file in the project root directory. So this is the project root directory here, and we just want to create a new file. So I'll right click on the root directory, go to new, and then file, and the name of that file is important. It has to be called pyproject.toml, and TOML is a markup language format. Do you want to add it to Git? Yeah, we can add it. So we're in our own branch anyway, so we're not going to affect anything else. TOML's a markup language format, and it's called Tom's Obvious Minimal Language, and you can read more about it here, but the objective of TOML was to make a config file format that humans can read. So it gets all the information in there, but it also is pretty clear if you're looking at it just what that information means. So I don't actually know a lot about this in detail because it's so easy. I don't need to. I just look at it and I'm pretty sure I know what's going on. Okay. So the config file has got these headings like square brackets project that create what's called a table. So I guess you can compare this to a JSON format, and that would be like a key, and then this would be the part what's in. Then that would be a so that would create an object, and then in there it would have dependencies as a name of a key, and then it would have a list of values. So it's all pretty similar. Oh look, I've even got a copy there. I can copy that. So it's just a little bit of hierarchy that it can introduce into this file. By the way, we use these square brackets and it's really easy to read. So what we're doing here, we're creating a project and we're having to put in the dependencies of the project that the project needs to run. So it's pretty much everything that I've got here in requirements except build, because we don't need build to run it, we only need build to build it. So there's our requirements. They're called dependencies. Then we have to specify the build system. And if there's no build system in, it will default to this. So we could run it now and it would work using these values. However, we can improve on those. So let's read this. Python building provides an isolated build system which can have different requirements to runtime. So our build system should use setuptool.build meta, so it uses the setup tools, that comes from setuptools, but we don't want to use the legacy attribute. We're going to require setuptools and wheel, but it's a good idea to specify later versions. So this one, the default versions are 40.8 and a really early version of wheel, but basically any version of wheel, but we'll go for the later ones. One of the problems though is that if we do that, this legacy thing won't work anymore because that's not available in later versions of setuptools, and we don't need it. But we'll set this to something that will work. So let's hide this. So we're going to use a later version of setuptools, so 65.6.3. and a later version of wheel, and we don't need the legacy attribute there, which doesn't exist in this later version of setuptools. Okay, we need to specify which data is dynamic in our project table. So this is anything under project is a table, anything under build system is another table. So we're going to specify dynamic equals version, and that means that the version of the wheel that we're creating is dynamically created. And then we could also include all these other things, and you'll read all about that in this configuring setuptools web link that I've given you. And then we have to tell setuptools where to find the package. So the package is here, it's in Prime Minister, it's not in deploy mod WSGI. And we don't, if we had tests, we don't want to include them in our final thing that we're going to distribute out to whoever's going to use it. So this information goes in its own table down here. So it's telling setuptools where to find the stuff to include in the packaging. Alright, so we've set up our pyproject.toml, and now we can build it. So to build it, we can just run that from the terminal. Oh, this is going to be exciting. I haven't tested this. So let's see. Python-m build. Alright, and you can see the first thing it does is it creates an isolated environment. So it's even isolated from the environment that we were running this in. It's downloaded these packages, which took a little bit of time because they didn't exist. And it's given us an error. So the project must contain the name property. So that's a good thing. Let's add name into here. Let's just call it Prime Minister. So I've lost. If we look down here, you will see I'll probably put the name in later on. BPAML Prime Minister. Yeah, that looks good. And we'll run that again. All right. So that's built this wheel. So it's built a file. It's called BPAML Prime Minister -0.0.0. So that's effectively a version number. It's designed to run on Python 3, but not Python 2 or Python 1. And it's got so the none and the any means it can run on any platform. It's got no other restrictions, and it's a wheel is the file format. And that file has been put into this folder up here called dist. So along with a tar, so that's like a zip file of all the source code. We're not going to use that one. We're going to use this one here, and that's the wheel. So we could use that wheel now to install our software anywhere else. Okay, so we've done that. Note that the version is incorrectly used. So we told it to dynamically get the version, but we didn't tell it where the version was. So we can do that. We can put in this little table here. And the order is not really that important. And that says go look in the Prime Minister package, and in there look for a module called version, and there look for a value called version, and there we've got 1.0.0. So let's see with our updated PyProject file whether we can build it. So I've put in some commands here, remove the pre-existing folder and add in and then do a new build. I didn't do that, so let's see what happens when they get built side by side. There we go. So you see they've now got the version number in the wheel that's been created. So that's pretty good. That one can be used now just like any other, and you can pip install from a wheel, and it will see what dependencies were in here and install them automatically as well. So is everyone successfully getting their wheels built? All right, now when you're doing code, one of the things you try to avoid is putting the same piece of information in two different places, because chances are if it's got to go in two different places, they're going to get out of sync. So one of the things that often gets out of sync is a version number. If you put a version number in your code, and then also in your source code repository you tag your code with version numbers, you're going to forget to do one or the other, and so they'll get out of sync. So it'd be really nice if we could get the version number not from a file as we have here, which is the version.py file, but if we could get that from the git tag. Now we haven't got many tags on here, so if I look in git here, I probably haven't got any tags. No, these are all branches, or these purple ones are branches, and if there's a grey one, that'll be a tag. So I haven't got any tags tagged, but let's keep going, and we'll see what we'll do. So using this, all right. So this is the tool. So we're going to add another tool in here, which is called setuptools source code management for TOML files. So we'll use that and add that into here. And then we're going to give it some instructions on what to do during a build. So we're going to say tell setuptools SCM to write that tool into version.py file. Okay. And we can also remove this dynamic one, because setuptools TCM will tell the build where to get the version number from. Okay, so let's try running that. So I'm doing that down in terminal here. I'll just say python-m build. In fact, I'll do the remove. Let's see if that works. This is if you're on Linux or Mac, you can use rm-r, but not on Windows. But the build command is the same. All right, now look at the version number here. We've got 0.1, so I must have a 0.1 tag somewhere in my Git repository, and then it's got dev59, which means basically I've got uncommitted files in my the branch that I'm on. So it yeah, I've got uncommitted files, so it's dirty, but it tells me what the latest commit I've got. So there's the latest commit plus dirty and a tag. Now Leo's just asked, can I tag? And yep, that's what we can do. We'll put a tag in our local repo. We don't have to push it up to the main repo, and it can use the versions from that. If you are doing a normal development cycle, you'd make sure that when you're building your wheel, you'd also push the tag up to the main repository, so that at any stage, if someone needs to recreate that wheel, they can. All right, so let's create our tag. First of all, we should we can commit all our changes. So let's use this message here. So you can see I've gone to the commit tab on the left hand side here. Implement Python's new recommended build system and setup tools. I'll save all the changes there and commit them. And yep, this is the first time I've been on here. And so I'll set them in. So that way Git knows who I am, so it can mark, as you can see, the changes that we've done moments ago. That's when it was created. And now we can tag that. So if I right click on that and say new tag, and let's did I suggest anything here? No, but let's just call it 1.0.1. And you can see the grey tag there. So you see the coloured ones. The yellow means the head. The green one is the name of the branch we're on, and the grey one is the tag. So now if we do the build, it should use our proper tag as our version number. I thought I was going to do that. So one of the problems is that we've got our version.py file is checked into our Git repository. So when we run it, it actually changes that file. And so now if I look in commit, I've now got a changed file. And so it doesn't put 1.0.1 here, it puts a dirty file name on it, because it's the change hasn't been committed. So we need to ignore that. So let's see, we can delete this file. Let's delete the file, and then when we create a new one, it'll ignore it. And so I've deleted version.py. I'll commit that change. Have I got? Yep, there's a git ignore. So let's get rid of version.py. I'll commit that as well. Alright, so Leo's brain's just exploded. Yeah, so Leo, if you just explain which part of it is causing the confusion, because I may be doing a bit too much here. Oh, you've probably the version changing. That is a bit confusing. I'm not sure why I didn't get that in my testing, but I must have ignored it earlier on in my testing. All right. Now we'll do another tag. And I can see here that I was supposed to put 168.0 as our new tag. And we'll run the build. So that looks like it's working now. It's got the name of the package, BPML Prime Minister. It's got our version 168.0, and then it's got the other bits of information about it, and we've got none of the dirty stuff in the version number. So that's all working. So I'll just go back over what changes I made to make that happen. I had to go into this file called .gitignore, and I put in there that I wanted to ignore prime minister /version.py, and I deleted the existing version.py and committed that to the repository, so the repository thinks that file doesn't exist anymore. But it does get created every time we do a build, but because it's ignored now, it doesn't register as making it dirty, and now it's put the version number into the build so that this can be used in the code. And there is actually one more change I need to make, is so that the code can use this version number. Unless I wasn't actually using it in the code. I probably wasn't. I was probably just using it in the build before. So when you search, so Leo's asked, when you search for the version, you can still search the tag. That's right, and tags are actually quite easy to search. If you look on GitHub, you can just go straight to the all the tags that you've got on a project. So if that one's got 0 tags, but let's have a look at one of the other projects. I haven't been, which one? So let's pull up this one. No, I didn't put tags on that. Well, here we go. Flask. Flask is a public project, and so they got 44 tags. So you can just pull up the tags there. You can see what they are. You can just jump straight to any one of those tags. You can check out a tag just like a branch, and then you can build from that tag, and it will build. It should give you a reproducible build of what the first time that it was done. Okay. So we've been through this. Check out. So distribution, version, build tag. That's how this name comes about. Still search, or the tag symbol in the Git tab. That's right, yeah. So in here in the Git tab, you can just look up those tags. There's probably an even easier way. I generally know where they are, so I just hover over them. But let's see, branch. No, I'm not sure if there's a way you can list them here. Be surprised if there isn't. But I've never needed to do that. Anyway, let's move on. So install the created wheel in your own virtual environment in Windows. Okay, so this is going to be a bit of a challenge. So let's have a look. I'll fire up a new. I'll go for command prompt. Get rid of those. All right, so I'll make a new directory here. And changed into that directory. So it's just an empty directory. Have a look, dir, there's nothing in it. And now what I want to do is create a virtual environment here. Now, normally, if I was on Mac or Linux, I'd type Python 3-m vnv, that'll do. So that says run Python with the module vnv, which is virtual environment, and create a virtual environment with the name, and I'll just call it vnv. in fact, here we go, we'll call it BPAML. We'll give it a name so that's a bit easier to recognize. BPAML 168VENV. Now, the problem is with the way I installed Python on this computer, and Windows, you don't put the 3. But even without the 3, because I did it without administration, it can't even find it. So I have to put in the full path to where my Python is, and this one it stores it in app data. So you can just go straight to it with this very obvious path, python.exe, and then run the venv module. So this is the path if it's a local one just for one user, and if it's for all users, then it'll be in C:, program files, Python, that sort of area. I'm not sure exactly where, but you just have to search till you find it. You can look in Pycharm. Pycharm will tell you where it is because it found it. All right, so we're going to use that to create a virtual environment. Then we're going to activate that virtual environment. We'll run activate.bat. There we go, and we can tell the virtual environment is activated because it's now got the name of the virtual environment out the front here on the command prompt. And now one of the advantages is I can just type Python, and Python will run because I'm now in a virtual environment, so it's set up a path for me. So now it's a lot easier to run Python once I've got my virtual environment activated. Okay, so I want to, I'll copy the wheel that we've created. BPAML Prime Minister, this one, and we'll just copy it to the current directory. That's right, I didn't even need to copy it, I could have just used it where it was. And so let's have a look. If I can run pip and tell me what's currently installed. It's just pip and setuptools in my virtual environment. And now if I install this wheel that I've created, I got the wrong one. Let's go get the right one. One 168.0. Yeah, I think that was the latest one. And then I can install that. And it's found all the dependencies, and it's adding them in. And you can see here, Visitor is being installed using the legacy setup.py install method because it does not have a pyproject.toml, and the wheel package is not installed. Right, so if I'd done pip install wheel before I did that install, then I wouldn't have got this deprecation notice for both of these, Visitor and Flask Bootstrap. But if we look at pip list now, it shows everything that's been installed in our local virtual environment, including our package, BPAML Prime Minister version 1.168.0, plus all these other dependencies, plus what we started off with, which was setuptools and pip. And if I'd had wheel in there, then these others, I wouldn't have got this deprecation warning. Okay, what was version 10? Oh, that was that one. Okay, so let's do the same thing. We'll install wheel. And then we'll repeat our install from before with the same version as provided. Oh, okay, yep. So we could create a new one if we wanted to, but I won't do that at the moment. Let's see if we can run it. So we're going to run the application. We've got to run these two commands, flask -- app prime minister init db. So that initializes our database of all our prime ministers, and then we can run it. Now it's giving us warnings here saying don't use in production deployment. We should be using that instead, but this really is a test. So let's give this a go. We'll pull up a web browser. And there's our Prime Minister's app. So we can look at all the Prime Ministers of Australia, all the Deputy Prime Ministers, have a look at particular information on any one of them. So this is all a web program that we've written in Python, and we've deployed to our little virtual environment running here on Windows. So let me know if you successfully got that working. What else have we got? Okay, so now if you notice back in our project, in our setup.txt, which used to be setup.py, we had a lot of other information here. You know, what classifiers, authors, information. It's all optional information that was in the old system, and so I've just shown here how to add this through to the new. Let's copy that and put this into pyproject.toml. So it's really just how to use the same, how to translate from the old system setup.py to the new one, pyproject.toml. Let's see, so we'll go, don't repeat that one. So I'll put that in. We'll give it a new version number, so let's commit that. More metadata in Pyproject. We'll tag that as .15 for the 15th step. 1.168.15. Okay, we'll try building it. And you see how our build, actually, our dist folder is this yellow color. That means it's been ignored. You'll see the name in git ignore, so don't include anything here. Don't include the egg info either. Alright. Error failed. Cannot declare project twice. Right, what have I done? Oh, there we go. Okay, now because I haven't pushed this up to another repo, I can delete the tag that currently exists because I haven't used it yet. No one else has got a copy, but if other people have got it, then it's a pretty bad move to delete a tag. I'll commit this change. In fact, I can just amend the previous commit, and then I can recreate that tag. Let's see if that works. Python build. Yep. Let's create it. 1.168.15. Let's see if I can stop this one that's running. Control C. Yes, that worked. All right. Sometimes Control C doesn't work on these Windows computers for some reason. So you can try using Control Break, or I've seen a couple other different commands, but yes, do a search on Stack Overflow to find out other commands that will work if Control C doesn't work. So we want to copy. Let's just install it straight from where it is. So it's in /pycharm /. I'll try again. Pip install dot maybe I did a backslash. Pycharm projects, BPAML Prime Minister, dist. What do I call it? BPAML Prime Minister. .1.168.15 wheel. There we go. So running the install again, uninstalled the previous one, uninstalled it, and then installed the new one, and then we can run that. So it'll be interesting, see if it's still got its database. It probably has. Yeah, so the database survived between installs. All right, so that's basically it. That's how to create wheel packages. So if you're giving someone the code, just give it to them as a wheel, and then it's easy for them to install. They can use pip to install with it. It'll install all the dependencies that they need. Does a few other checks about dependencies mostly. I hope that was useful for you. Okay, so Leo's asked, can you create a diff install? I guess you're asking if you want to patch an existing install. I don't know how to. I don't think you can do that, but really a lot of your libraries have already been installed, so you're only installing your code. Yeah, can you create a diff install from the last version? Yeah, I don't think you can. I haven't seen anyone do that, but it's not something I've looked up, so I can't be 100% sure. Next week, next session is going to be on the 18th of January, and it's going to be an in-person session as well as an online session. So I'll just do a quick half-hour online session, and we're going to be working out how to use Docker. And so Docker, well, once again, we'll use this web app that we've written in Flask, and we'll install it into a Docker container, and we'll create another container so you can see how to link different containers together as a way of deploying things. It's a really good way of isolating your dependencies. It's an alternative to virtual environments. If you're using containers, you don't need to use virtual environments. It's a lot stricter way of isolating the different components, and it means that you can have, if you've got several components that all need to be running at the same time, they've got different conflicting dependencies, you can still run them in each one in their own container. So that'll be at Brisbane Business Hub in Queen Street Mall. So I hope you come along to that. Please register so we've got an idea of numbers. I think we've got a maximum of 30. So if you are registered and we're getting close to that and you're not intending to come, you please deregister so that there's room for someone else to come along. After that, Arun will be back from overseas, so we'll start to have some more machine learning sessions as well. So the building the Brisbane Business Hub is actually above the Brisbane City Council Visitor Information Centre, which is in the old Regent Cinema on Queen Street Mall. So it's a very nice location, but the doors do lock, so we'll have someone down there until 5:30, letting people in. But after that, we won't have anyone there. You probably contact us on Slack, and we'll send someone downstairs to open the door for you to let you in. But I look forward to seeing you there. Okay. Catch you later.